Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Higgscast Playing God, where each episode we talk about a different topic relating to running tabletop games. I'm Nick Logie, and joining me are Jesse Cromines
Hi.
and Xander Nolan.
Hello there.
Today we're going to be
Why does
talking
he get
about what?
extra focus? What?
I could always Jesse Cromines tonight.
That's right. Sunday.
There you go. All right, we got tons of hype for this. We got our topic for tonight, whether we should focus more on railroading the players or giving them a freeform experience. Personally, when I play a game, I like the freeform shit. Going all over the place, getting all sorts
I love freeform shit. I just am afraid that the GMs that run games for me don't like how much I like freeform shit. And that's the trouble is from a GM standpoint, what's right, and from a player standpoint, what's right. Xander, where do you weigh in?
To play devil's advocate, I think that there's a time and place for both, and the way it's gone about, one, is important, and two, more importantly, is whether or not the players are aware of / prepared for either one. Because if you have a bunch of players that are going to expect a railroaded experience, not in terms of players don't have choice, but in terms of storyline, and you're going to follow a gentle progression of the story as it unfolds, versus you guys are just a bunch of characters in the woods, go do stuff. And I think it's a big difference between player expectations and whether or not you kind of
So,
brought that up.
so what you're getting at is we should probably set this right at the beginning of the campaign, so that way both the players and you recognize that it is going to be a more railroaded or freeformed experience. Is pretty much what you're getting at.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's crucial to even do it before certain games. Like, there are certain things that I'll do in my campaign. The campaign I'm running now is completely open world. They can do whatever the fuck they want, much to my chagrin. But there will be episodes where I say, okay, we're gonna have access to a shopping montage, or we'll be able to into a town this time, so that they understand what's ahead of them. And it's not railroaded, but it's like, here's some content that's ahead of you. So sometimes even like before an episode or a session is important to say what it's going to be. And sometimes it can change within a campaign. It just depends on, what it is. I don't have a whole lot of experience with railroading. I know, Nick, you and I, when we played Dark Heresy with Ian, that was...
Yeah, that was,
that
he was. Yeah, he was running that straight out of the module books. Was it Harlock's Legacy or something like that? And
Yeah, something like
like even the way he did it was, even though it felt like we were more freeform in what we could do, because we did a lot of crazy nonsense in that
Yeah,
game.
we did.
But
Yeah,
in the end, he was running it out of a book. He had like certain like tick marks he had to go through, certain story beats to hit while he was going through the whole campaign.
I see. I see it now. I see what you're saying, because to me it felt kind of freeform because it was my first tabletop experience. But I do see now that it was railroady, because I remember when literally the Emperor appeared in my dreams, was like, "Bro, if you don't do this, I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah. When the Emperor himself comes up, it's like, I have directed all of my attention.
I
10,000
need
psychers
this.
died for you to get this fucking message, and you will pay attention, Shiv.
Asshole, come on. And at the time I didn't realize that was a thing, that like the Emperor appearing mattered at all. But now I see that it was railroaded. So I guess that's an example of it being done well. But that was a professionally written one, not a homebrew one.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
The type of game
Got-
that you're
got-
playing, the like whatever system you're running or playing in, I think that has a big effect on whether or not it is automatically tailored to a particular direction. Like Stars Without Number, when we played that, that's like you generate an entire star chart completely randomly, alien races.
I was gonna bring that up, in that I think it depends on the system and the setting of what you're doing, and by its very nature, Stars Without Number, the system is so open world, it's staggering. It's like, because there's planets, there are whole systems that haven't even been discovered yet that you got to get your ass out there and discover.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you played a linear Stars of that number, you would be lopping off like 3 limbs and being like, oh, this is fine.
Even when the players are like, I just want to randomly go to this sector and see what's there.
Yeah.
Like, you have the tools
Yeah.
to just be like, let me roll some dice. Okay, there are 8 worlds there.
Exactly.
3 of them are inhabitable. Only one actually has people on it, but they're all made of bees.
Suddenly, underground spider venom spitters because fuck Ray.
Dude, he invited those giant spiders on our asses.
He did. To those listening who don't know what the fuck we're talking about, Stars That Number is such a like interactive and malleable system and setting that the GM, instead of rolling, asked a player to describe something they did, and with an offhand comment, he generated and populated this seemingly unwritten planet into something big and vibrant. It just so happened it was like the mixture of Dune and Tremors, which we all fucking hated, but it was really interesting. I think Stars That Number is one of those systems that allows you to allows the player to interact with it. So I don't think a railroading system would work like at all. I think like D&D. I think D&D you can railroad pretty well.
I think D&D's kind of, I don't want to say more specifically for railroading, but with the level progression, CR encounters of monsters, then it kind of falls that way to a lot of degree.
I mean, I think it is. I think it's railroaded by its very concept of whether or not you can get a thing. Like, railroading doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be many different axes. Like, if World of Warcraft is considered, like shifting your attention from one area to another. Like, it doesn't have to be, because I'm thinking like super railroaded of it's just every session is a different dungeon and there's no plot connecting each of them. But that's actually something I hadn't thought about at all, even prepping for this episode of this podcast. That you just don't have access to certain creatures or characters. Like, there are things in my game that I have been waiting. I've been chomping at the bit to throw at my players because they're so cool, but they can't because they just can't handle it. And that shit, man, I just had my world blown.
And conversely, once they get past a certain level, like you can't have them fight goblins even if they're super important to the story for some reason.
Right.
Because they just be like, I blink at them really hard and everyone dies.
I consistently have my players hand wave past bandits, and it makes them feel cool, but it's like, even if I roll really high on my homemade random encounter table and they get 30 bandits, they can still just fireball once and they're done.
Well, it was like that time when we were playing Legends of Latir, and you made that distinction when we were playing it, where it's just like you were traveling for days, but I didn't do any random encounters, and you were like, oh, I guess we're past that. Because after a certain point, like, just regular random encounters are like what you just said. They can't lose, or they just don't bring enough to the game.
You can hand wave them.
Well, on that topic, I have a kind of differing opinion. Random encounters are good to keep the players on their toes so that they know that at any point in time something can happen and to always be prepared. That being said, if a monster seems too tough, or a monster is not tough enough, or bandits or whatever, I think that it would be it's more apt that the GM, because the world is yours. A goblin doesn't have to have a strength 5, blah, blah, blah. They don't have to have those things. They can be whatever you make them to be. And because this is such an open game, these things are basic rules for suggestion, but a skilled DM can kind of slide that scale up and down. And you might come across a band of 15 goblins at level 12 characters, and these things nearly kick your ass because they have fucking 4 fighter levels and 2 sorcerer levels and shit, and you kind of beef them up a little bit. They're still goblins, and they still work good for the story, and they still operate in the culture that goblins operate in, but they're still a challenge combative wise. So I think it depends.
And I agree. I agree that you should be able to fine-tune something. Nick and I were actually talking about, And if any of my girls are listening, you're not allowed to listen because I'm talking about stuff. It's spoilers. Don't no, just shush. Um, the Beholder. When in Legends of Latir, when we interacted with the Beholder, we smeared its ass across the floor, dude.
We killed that thing
Like,
so
we
bad.
It was CR15 with its lair, and you guys were level 8.
Do
and
you
managed
know
to
how
destroy
excited
it.
I was for that fight, dude?
That's why I put it
I
there.
was so excited for the fight, and it wasn't that hard. Like, I'll be honest. I mean, it was well run. It's no knock against Nick. It just didn't, a Beholder is very much luck of the draw because it's all about its rays and random rolls. And it
Yeah.
just didn't feel easy, or it just didn't feel hard. And I was talking to Nick about how I'm going to beef mine up, and I'm going to increase the AC and the health. And I'm thinking that'll do it because it'll make it a longer fight, more interesting. And I'm going to use the Ocarina of Time sequelitis thing of, length of time equals difficulty, even if it's not. And
Well, the way you were explaining that to me was because since it has more health, it can take more of a beating, which gives
Right.
it more turns, which allows it to use more eye rays.
right, which it gives it more rolls and a higher chance to do the scary stuff, but not to the point that it does all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, increasing the AC or the health or whatever is great, especially if you want something, if you need it to equal a certain thing. But if characters are having a fight to the death, bro, with things that have been consistently dogging them the whole time, how does that help the abstraction if everything doesn't have that same abstraction? Like, everything then has to scale, That means that the characters can never get to a point where they fight a dragon, or can beat a dragon. Or it means that they have a chance to, I just think it's difficult. I think scaling crunchies is a difficult thing to even undertake.
Well, that's probably why that's pretty much why they have a certain CR and like the same stat block. But
or why they'll have higher ranks of the crunchies, like a bandit chieftain or a hobgoblin warlord, or a goblin captain.
But that did make me think, like, if you make D&D more freeform, then you could already just put that stuff in the land. Like, if there's a mountain that definitely has a dragon on it, then but it's not like they're being pointed directly in that direction, then that could be like, we need to carve out our own epic history, and we're gonna do a Rocky montage throughout the entire campaign to get beefy enough to go take on that dragon and steal its hoard. And then they can finally get up that mountain. The barbarian flexes his muscles that make him like 3 times bigger, and then they can just punch him in the giblets.
That's like, I try to make my game as open world as possible because that's what I want. I had run Shadowrun, which is pretty linear. Like, it's very linear, in fact.
Yeah.
It's a series of
it's a series of sandboxes that you get to play in how you see fit, but you do not get to leave the sandboxes, unless you're okay with dying.
You get thrown in the sandbox, but when you're in that sandbox, you can do whatever. But at the end of the day, your parents come to pick you up from daycare. You get picked up by the scruff, because you're a cat, right? And then you get thrown out of the playground.
And then you throw up, and then you lick your own ass.
And then you have to fend for yourself for the evening as you work with wolves to hunt down a deer.
What the fuck kind of cat? What kind of cats have you been hanging out with, dude? Like a one-eyed.
The coolest cats. They play jazz, by the way. That's what they do at midnight after they have that deer.
Jazz playing cats.
So I wanted to make my game open world as possible, and it actually started in Pathfinder, and then it switched to 5th edition. And one of the ways that I made random encounters scary, but still gave it like a sense of scale without it being too overpowered, is I would have location-based random encounter tables. So like, one for plains, one for a forest, one for a mountain, and I would slowly, from 1 to 20, write different things. And like, in a desert setting, it was 1 to 10, nothing happens because it's a fucking desert. Nothing's gonna happen. It was like 11 to 12, and then 12 to 13, and then in like 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 were all each in their own things. And every time they rolled on a table, their level was added to it, so that more and more often they'd like the higher level they got, the more, the better chance they had of interacting with something. And always at the very, 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 very tippy top with a natural 20, and only with a natural 20 could they get these things, was like a dragon, or phantom armor, or a wraith, or fucking something like way you're not supposed to fight it, because you got to have those scary moments like Skyrim. Skyrim has those moments where it's like, yeah, I just killed a dragon, but what's that giant thing over there? Let me go see this giant dead. What?
Yeah, you
So that's what the entire world looks like in a glance.
Right. Ah, yes. I have entered the stratosphere. Thank you, Giant. The Giants, the Skyrim NASA space program.
That's right. The high five on re-entry is amazing.
The screaming elbow drop. And I'll be honest. I kind of wish, in my open world thing, like I wish I had been able to go back in the past and tell myself all the stuff I'm doing in the game that I'm running now, and urge myself to do it Railroad, because I don't have the most advanced players in the world who can think outside the box consistently. One of my players is pretty seasoned in things that aren't D&D. One is a completely new player, and the other hasn't played D&D in like 15 years. And so I wish I had railroaded it, so that I could more accurately tell the story that I want to tell, rather than depending on the dice. Because if a dragon shows up and eats my players, I can't be like, the dragon doesn't eat you because it's a fucking dragon. That's not the game.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they have their strengths and weaknesses, and I don't think everybody fully realizes them before they get into things.
Yeah, well, there's also the possibility that a potentially deadly encounter in combative can lead to a social encounter on the completely off the cuff. Like, for example, if you come across as a level 5 party of 4, and you come across a couple of goblins out in the woods, and they're just sitting there making some bacon,
jerking off,
or whatever, doing whatever it is goblins are doing. They're sitting there, and then all of a sudden these 4 dudes come by, and they're like, okay, and the players say, hey, goblins are all evil, kill the goblins. The goblins are like, no, don't kill us, we didn't do anything, we're just making bacon. So the what your characters and what your monsters are doing is also really important. I had for one of my games that I was running, oddly enough, when they say that a GM is a cat wrangler, I'm doing this literally now. I have 3 tabaxis that are running around this small island in my world. It's great, but it's really hard to keep up with. In a lot of senses, but they go into this cavern where they're supposed to be getting some kind of ore for a thing.
They say, barkeep, I'll take 3 of your warmest plates of milk.
But they go into this cavern to mine, and there's a tribe of goblins in there, and the goblins are all working for the Goblin King, and he's elsewhere doing his own thing. And during the fight, they're like murdering everything. And at the very end, the last one was like, okay, I give up. I'll tell you whatever the hell you want to know. I'll do whatever the hell you want me to do. But please, don't shank me. So I think that it's also giving your NPCs life enough that they can make their own choices. And most things are going to run from a fight. Even if they're goblins. They're not stupid. They're just not smart. So,
but see, I don't, and I agree that your NPC should have life, and that's actually one of the best things. That's the thing I like most about GMing, is just the infinite amount of characters I can play. I don't think that's exclusive to railroading versus freeform, because, like, when Nick basically ran a railroad campaign for Shadow. God, what was it? Was it Shadowrun Z? Shadowrun? What the fuck was it called? We had so many
Which
different
Shadowrun? Because there was a lot of them. But
yeah, the Double Jack, the Double Jack saga.
I just call that the Nth World because it's based on the Sixth World. But my name's Nick, so there's an N in there instead.
Well, the Nth is also algebraic.
It also works
anyway,
mathematically.
So all right, with the Double Jack saga, you know, not to pat myself on the back, but you know, he was awesome.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
That was railroaded. And Nick threw in some fucking stellar, like out of this world NPCs, bro. Like Salbert, like L, like Willie Stacks, like God, what was the fucking dude who looked like Kanye West?
Slicer X.
Slicer X, bro. And there were all of these organic interactions, and they all had their own life, and they, you know, they weren't these static motherfuckers that stood around and did nothing. Like when Double Jack, was it Double Jack? I don't remember who it was. When somebody interacted, oh no, it was Johannes. When Johannes cut a deal with the Bug Spirit, Willie Stacks was like, "Dude, nuh-uh. Like, we are not cool anymore, bro."
Oh yeah. He had
and
his
like
own morals and shit. Like he was not taking like dealing with ultimate evil.
He was literally the most basic character concept you can fucking think of. The bartender. That's it. But so much life was put into him that he had this huge interaction. So I don't think. And I've got all these fucking great characters I have in my game, and it's freeform, and I only hope they're half as memorable as the NPCs Nick made in the Double Jack saga. So I don't.
Well, there's also the NPCs that usually show up more on freeform, where suddenly the players want to talk to the random guy standing in the corner who was picking his nose prior to that, and then it's just like, oh, now he needs a whole thing. I didn't name him before, but now he's in my NPC list as one of their major allies.
I call them gray blobs, and I in fact refer to them as gray blobs in games, so they don't talk to them, because my players are like cats as well, as they'll be like, yeah, there's a elf sitting in the corner drinking wine, and there's a rugged battle axe building. Don't talk to the elf. God damn it. I don't. Yeah. All right, now I gotta think of an elf name. I hate elf names. Fuck. You don't want to talk to Drax the Destroyer? Go talk to Drax the Destroyer.
Yeah, if you describe anything, they're gonna go at it. It was like, there was one guy sitting next to a windowless corner. I just mentioned him. It was just like, there's an elf over sitting by
I love windows. I want to go talk to the guy about windows.
Anyway, the guy you're actually here to see is, well, hold on now. We need to move over here. We need to talk to that guy. He's drinking milk. That's important.
I want to buy the window sitter guy a drink. I want to hit on the window guy.
You see, like the great thing about that is, it gives you the opportunity to play a new and interesting NPC. The trouble with that is if you're like, all right, I describe this city, and especially if you don't have a application like you're doing it online with one of the free online ones like Roll20, you don't have the luxury of a lot of maps and stuff, at least not as readily, and your characters can't move around a map organically. So I don't have to describe quite as much to the setting. I can, and I do, depending on what's going on. But the people that they talk to, they're just NPCs standing around. But when you're describing, say, you walk into this village and you see 6 small huts, each with thatched roofs, and there's a stone building just on the other side of this little fountain courtyard, and the stone building.
I feel like I'm there.
Some kind of.
Oh shit! Where am I?
Some kind of.
What am I wearing? Am I naked?
And
Xander, your description is so good. I'm lost now.
But the trouble
before?
is, the trouble that you run into is.
What race am I?
You would be.
Can I be a woman?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
But with descriptions, everything that you say, the players can and should that's take as important.
Fantastic point, actually, and that I think is the beginning of another very important discussion of pen and paper versus online.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's a good
absolutely.
one.
Yeah,
I already got that in the
I
docket.
think you just. Oh, look at that!
Huh.
Hey, there you go. Thinking ahead.
There you go. Um,
Well, I
think,
thought about that because of my general hatred for using tiles and stuff in pretty much any game.
you don't like tiles?
I really don't. I'd much rather
What
do
the fuck,
everything
man?
via
We're gonna.
just.
Well,
You want to fight? We're outside now, apparently.
we should say. Xander, what race am I? God damn it! I'm gonna start rolling dice.
Yeah, what's my strength score?
Oh God.
No,
why
what's
am I why am I DMing this podcast?
That's also the other thing. For those of you listening, we will at some point be playing games. I don't know when. I don't know what. Nick has all
Special one
this
shots where we will
special one shots where we
try
shoot
out
ourselves in
different
the foot.
systems and then play Russian roulette at the end of the game to see who's carrying on to the
So
next
that
podcast.
that actually that reminds me because Nick and you and I were talking about what game we should have played, and it also addresses the thing that Xander was saying of scaling crunchies. So there's a game made way back in the crusty old years of 2002, called Riddle of Steel, and it is like so metal. It's so like in war there is peace, in blah there is blah. It's so eighth grade. It's so tremendously eighth grade. And the system is really simple. It's fucking, it's D10s, it's successes, it's easy. Skills, attributes, proficiencies, whatever. It's kind of like World of Darkness meets D&D. The thing that I like, and that I posed this to Nick, and it actually is something you, Xander, would be interested in. And that's the thing I couldn't think. Well, I'll finish describing it, and then we'll talk about it. Is the most key feature about the game is there's no health. You literally, and this is what makes it so fucking eighth grade, is the only thing you have to keep track of is blood, and everything does damage no matter what. And it's not about how good someone is with a thing. You'll get hit eventually. It doesn't matter if it's a drunk dude in a bar with a knife. It doesn't matter if it's a man on a mountain with an arrow. You will get hit at some point and you will bleed. And because there's no health, and because there are no hit dice, and because there's no leveling, there's only proficiency with it. But still the threat of, you don't gain more blood. You don't become more virile. You're like, I now have 200 gallons of blood. Like,
are you sure? Because I just shoved in a donor's transfusion into my arm, and as you're hitting me, I'm actually becoming stronger.
I just ate a very rare kebab. I'll have you know.
I'm actively eating a live chicken.
So whether or not you're level 2 or level 20, or you're fighting one guy or 100 guys, the threat of death and blood loss is there, and the wounds and how things are kept is it's based on how well it was hit and critical hits and where it was hit in specific locations, and it's very detailed, and the rules are pretty dense. But that's the kind of game that scales. In that there's no scaling, because it's just a dude is a dude is a dude. It's kind of like the fucking debate of which would you pick in a fucking back alley street fight, a knife or a bat, and the answer is neither, because both are gonna hurt, no matter who you are.
Don't get in a back alley street fight.
Yeah, exactly. The answer is you run away.
Yeah, you run from the fucking shit.
Yeah, you run from that shit. And so that kind of lends towards what you were saying of it could turn into a social fight, because if the people you're fighting are smart, I haven't played this, I haven't tested. I've tried. It's dense and nobody wants to play with it because it's so huge. Like in that kind of game, someone who's like weak but really good with their words would be amazing, because if somebody could just avoid an entire fight, oh my god, that's a godsend, and that changes what we understand. Because in D&D, it's like, dog, got them. Like you said with the goblins, like, oh, they're goblins, you gotta kill them.
Yeah, you gotta stab them in the face, and then when you get hit by one of their knives, you're not sure if it actually causes you to bleed, or if you're just okay, or if it winded you, or whatever.
Or if it plucked out your fucking eye, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's so raw about it. And I don't know enough about the game to see if it could lend well towards railroading or open world, but it really seems to be, focusing on its whole combat system and it's like very simple skill stuff. So that's my little tangent about Riddle of Steel.
Sounds like a good one.
It seems good. The dice are interesting. The difficulty is set by the GM. So if something is like difficulty 3, the way you succeed on the check is to have a D10 roll above 3, and if you're rolling a D10, you have a very high chance of doing that. And if you're rolling 4 dice, you have a really high chance.
So
And it's,
wait,
it's
so
that.
are they treated as different, or do you like add them together? You said it was
No,
success based, right?
it's just how many total dice got above 10. So it's like, all right, I want to throw this mug across the room and hit that guy in the head, and the GM thinks in his head, okay, they have the difficulty in mind. It's 5 out of 10 because you're drunk, he's wobbling and he's drunk, and it's full of ale, and you got to hit him. They roll 3d10. They roll a 1, a 2, and an 8. The 8 is above a 5, so they got 1 success. 1 success is a success, so it hits.
And then you get into the actual bar fight portion of the proceedings.
Yep. And it's very simple dice. It's just the stuff surrounding it in its hyper realism of where armor is located and how you're using a weapon and maneuvers you're using. It's complicated.
I think that one would be really hard to railroad in a lot of senses. Well,
I don't know. Does it have like its own setting, or is it like just generic medieval
No, it does.
kind of thing?
It has its own setting. It doesn't seem too bad. It's got a pretty huge map. It's kind of weird because it is from 2002. Like on the back it says like it has 41 unique interactive countries and a magic system that'll blow you away. That's the other thing. The magic system is completely customizable. You make spells on the fly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
good.
neat. So I think with that alone, and that in the setting, I think it would be kind of open world. I don't know.
Well,
I've never played it.
even with like 41 countries and all this, like we were talking about Shadowrun earlier, and it was literally just Earth. And even if on like a smaller scale, focusing in on just Seattle, there are so many streets. It's miles long, like different like cities within the city, all sorts of nonsense, and that's
gangs,
still pretty
businesses.
railroady overall.
Yeah. And I think what makes that very railroady is because Seattle is treated as the room in which you're playing in, and all of those things are objects to interact with in the objective within the room. Mind you, there's a fuck ton of those objects, but they're still all known. Like the way you and I ran it, we very much knew if someone said, all right, I want to go here at this time, what's going to happen? Well, I know exactly what's going to happen. Your cars are going to get stolen, and you're going to get punched in the face for being an orc. And that made it to where it was kind of railroady.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Will's game of Stars Without Number, where it was, all right, what if I go here and do that? I'm like, all right, let's take an 8-minute break. I got to roll some fucking dice.
I'm thinking like there might be like a meta freeform, because even with
How do you mean?
So with Shadowrun or Stars or whatever, it's like when you like pick your mission or whatever, then you choose the mission, like you point yourself where you want to go, but then once you've selected that, you've basically picked your own sandbox to jump into, but you are then restricted by said sandbox. So like even though there was a bunch of auto generation for Stars Without Number, once we got to a planet and Will figured out like what he wanted to do with it, then there was a bit of railroading, and like this is the story that kind of plays out. Like you guys are there for it, and you can interact with it however you want. But it's still like there was freeform to get there, but then railroad once you were.
I think that works. Go ahead.
Well, so what you're saying is it's self-chosen and self-afflicted railroading,
right?
Because that kind of reminds me of a session of Shadowrun that I ran, where I had 3 different Shadowruns in mind, and I introduced them to the player under the guise of, "You guys have time off. What do you do?" But I was prepared and ready to run all 3 of them. They didn't know that, but it was still railroading when it felt like open world, and so it ended up being self-afflicted railroad.
See, the way I've kind of looked at this particular issue in the past, a couple of games ago when I was running with my Tabaxi characters, They were traveling from a portion of the country that they're in called Greymont down from this tower towards another city. And in between the two areas, there's this kind of empty wasteland of not a whole lot of stuff going on. And I didn't really. I'm of a mind where there's a map for this, and you can have an encounter. Or there might be an encounter, or what have you. But I hadn't planned anything because my expectation was that they were just going to pass by the things that say abandoned and ruins of.
Yeah,
and
right.
They're like, no, we're
Yeah,
investigating the shit
no,
out of
they're
this.
not. They're players.
And I was
What
like,
do you think?
I was
Also,
like,
they're cats.
Xander, I saw that map, and the first thing I was like, so we're supposed to be going here? How close is this in comparison to it? I pointed at it, and I was like, well, those are the ruins that they're just nobody's lived there in a lot. We're going there
like,
right now.
So I had to create a map on the fly, and I'm like, okay, I had planned to do a couple of different things, but fuck it, let's do it right now.
Bro,
We'll play it live.
let me tell you, pre-making dungeon maps is the best decision you'll ever make.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Absolutely, take forever, but it's definitely worth it once you can execute it.
Yep.
Yes, but after they'd gone through and done all that stuff, the mission was go to this place, talk to this person. What they did after that and how they handled the situation was completely up to them. But I had planned out what my expectation was, and that's a really big kind of part of it. You got to be able to kind of try and anticipate what your players are going to do, and that's either easy or hard depending on the kind of players you have.
That leads me to thinking about the way I run games, and I think you run the games the same as well. Ever since I ran Shadowrun Streets, which was a freeform, non-mission based, do what you want, gang, whatever, like a gang novella. I always started each session with X plot thing is going to happen. They can be there for it or not. They'll probably be there. How they get to it and how they interact with it is up to them. I don't know anything past that. And I always figured that because it was this thing is happening and it's in the world and it's in the open environment and they get to choose whether or not they interact with it is freeform. But now I'm thinking that it's railroading because they have to interact with it. And their interaction could be not to.
Yeah, that basically turns it into two lines. You either continue down straight and you get to do the thing, or you pull the lever and it switches tracks and you go down a different thing.
And then say wrong lever.
The no, the not doing it track.
Yeah, the nope button, every GM's least favorite button.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
See, what I like doing for my freeform shit is if there's like an overarching story that I like telling or is important to the plot, then I'll use the elements of freeform, and then based on decisions that they've made or just whatever they do, then figure out a way to tie that into the more railroaded kind of story, even though it could affect the outcome of the end game as long as the major players are still kind of there.
That's actually something that I had to alter. My original expectation for the Tabaxi game was to have a story that's being told and let them follow this line, and this line is just like, oh, there's a piece of yarn on the floor. I'm just gonna follow this until it gets to the end. And I realized that that's not how these cats are gonna freaking operate. So I had to like overarch the story and then kind of let things happen independently, and they're going to happen whether the players interact with them or not. And from there, let them just pick what they want to do. And I'll drop hints and be like, hey, there's a thing going on, or what do you want to do next? And there's ways to kind of manipulate the players into choosing what you want as far as story goes, but just having a dozen things that they can do kind of just sitting in your back pocket and ready to go, I think is what makes a difference between a freeform and a railroad. I think it's more a merger of the two, like a spider's web. You start at a specific point and you follow these tendrils, And the spider's web is static; it's always going to be there. But each of those points can be hit in any sequence that they want, and that's how freeform would work.
And I think that's what we've just fucking we came in as being like, all right, gentlemen, it's going to be a debate, X versus Y, and it's like you have to have both.
It's true.
Like, and I didn't realize that until we've had this discussion of like you have to have both, and you have to. It just depends on which is more dominant. Like, you can have absolutely 100% railroading, by using blah blah blah. What's it called? D&D Adventures Guild, I think it's called. Where it's literally just a fucking bunch of dungeons and like Shadowrun missions, where it's literally just you have no say in the matter. Why you're here isn't important. Do the thing.
Yeah, your fixer contacts you. This is your job.
Right. Yeah, it's like, oh well, can I stop and get takeout before? It's like, I don't care. You're there. And I feel like even that has small little bubbles of freeform because you're interacting with this small little room.
Well, even back with the Dark Heresy thing that Ian was running, he didn't show me the book because we were still playing it at the time, but he was saying that like there were several points in that book where it's like, okay, if they do this thing, then this thing happens.
Yeah.
And you got to go down like this different route now. So even the books are like, all right, we do need to have some leeway because shit happens.
I actually I ended up looking at the last page of one of those books, and it had it was the like appendix or the epilogue of the last book in the 3-book series, and it had like 15 different if X then Y scenarios, and one of them was so outlandishly impossible, but like would have changed the entire game forever. And what it was, remember that beast thing that we fought in the chapel, that I killed? Remember that I was
the one that you didn't really kill it. It was more like rolling 2d10 damage at you plus like 16, and if you got hit, you would have been annihilated.
Yeah, it was 2d10 plus 16 versus my 13 health. Yeah, it was the Widower, I think it was called.
Yeah, that was it, the Widower. That thing was awesome.
So we killed it. If we had taken its face and put it in a jar and kept it, it would have given us divine prophecies on every major plot point as it relates to the Harlock legacy shit for the rest of the campaign.
Oh wow! But instead we were like, no, get that away from me, burn it.
Instead, Jasselus shot it in the face point blank. But yeah, shit, man. The verdict is in.
And you need both.
You really do need both.
One thing that I do to tie in Freeform and Railroad together is if there's like something completely separate that either they want to do or I just had, because I sometimes view games as like open world video games where it's like people are going to pick up quests that they see just around. It's like, you could see the main one over there. There's that guy that you need to go talk to. But that lady over there is having some trouble, so I think I should go help.
But that guy's wearing a really cool hat. You want to go check it out?
I need to go take that hat. But some of the times when I write that stuff, even though it's supposed to be separate, it turns out that it by happenstance it can fit so well into the main plot. It's like if there's a mysterious bad guy that is assisting the main big bad villain, but I haven't figured out who that is yet, and they've interacted with some random jackass who happens to hate them a lot.
Yeah.
It could just be that guy now, and it works real well because it gives them personal intrigue and determination to get that guy.
I will not lie. I have done that time and time again. Of you interact with a person, I don't know how they fit into the story, but you haven't seen enough of the story to know exactly why. And then I write a minor connection, the likes of which the details aren't readily apparent to them so that they can't expose it. And then as I progress through the story, I begin exposing this very recently written thing as if it had been written game one.
Yeah, that is
it. Actually,
magic.
It lends extremely well to the wonder and majesty and like the small world mindedness of big campaigns.
Yeah. Now, if you're gonna run something like that with that kind of like massive thing to it. It's got to be at least like a 4 or 5 month campaign for it to really sink in. But yeah, that's one of those things that you get to do as a DM. That's just let me show you this magic trick. Whew. I planned it
Bro,
all along. They're like, what?
I actually just pulled the rug out from underneath my players from a lawful evil ally they made in season 2. We're on season 6 now, and this campaign has been running for about 16 months.
Wow.
Damn!
Yeah, I've been running this for a very long time.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was last February was when I started running it. So 15 months. And players have come and gone, and it's been whatever. But season 2, which was a few months after the game started, they made friends with a lawful evil demi-lich, whose entire motive was, I'm lazy and I don't want to take over the world. But I could, but I'm not. And they would just find him in the most odd places. Be like, oh, you see this pile of bones and this and that, and one of them has pink gems in it. They're like, what the fuck, Pinky? Like, hey, I was planning on... and he would always play up like, hey, I'm going to take over the world right here. And I'm like, you were sleeping, weren't you? Yeah, I was sleeping. You got me. What's up?
Dude, that sounds like one of the greatest characters you got to play. Honestly.
Yeah, and here's how I manage the game is I slowly over time introduce different patrons for them to interact with. The very first one they got was a Coatl in disguise who was named Yuka, and so he's the lawful good, the lawful good patron for them to interact with. Then they met this one, who is the lawful evil one for them to interact with. And then in season 3, they met a gold dragon that basically ran the equivalent of, in terms of economic power, she runs the equivalent of the New York Stock Exchange. She's a ancient gold dragon. And she's true neutral, 100%. If it doesn't make me money, I don't care. And so I gave them these 3 patrons to rely on, and they relied on them for different things for so long. And I was like, this guy's lawful evil. And, he has had these lawful evil plans. Like, he had cut a deal with the Lich that is the antagonist of my campaign 1,000 years ago. And so they've been interacting with him and having this and that, and they've discovered that, like, he's planted magical tracking devices, and, like, he's accidentally let slip information and all this other stuff, like this, like, espionage-based negligence, and he's betrayed them, and it's like 11 months later, and they're like, it blew him out of the water. Like, oh my god, I can't. Oh no, Pinky. And I'm like, he's a demi-lich. What do you fucking expect? And so, like, having those fun moments, and I didn't start thinking of that way that he could be connected until, like, 4 months ago.
The same thing happened with L from Shadowrun.
I figured.
I had a cool character that I wanted to, like, a counter hacker that was originally going to be.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to digitize my voice because I'd recently played once again through System Shock 2. And
Hell yeah.
I like the voice modulations in that. And so I just wanted to give you that clip and then see how that played out. And it turned out that it was like 50-something games later or some shit like that. It's like the greatest twist ever.
Yep. I am the AI. No!
That was... I knew that was the most satisfying twist I'd ever done, because you had to stop playing the game for like 5 minutes.
I did. I had to step away, bro. I had to step away. I have a... If we've moved on from the railroading versus open world discussion, I have.
I think we solved it. We solved the mystery. We're done. We did it.
We cracked the riddle.
Railroad
I
versus
actually have a
Freeform.
twist.
Fuck it, both. You need it. Do it. Live it. Learn
I
it.
have a GM feat that I would like to brag about. But the reason why I need to brag about it is because only one other person has ever interacted with it, and it was Marissa. It was when I didn't have a lot.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah, Xander
I haven't heard this one.
And so this is my crowning moment in all fucking forever. in any. I will never top this. And what made it even more of a treasure was that it was so difficult because it was a one-player game. I was running the game. Marissa was the only player, and I would run this once or twice a week. It was my little gift to her because we didn't do a lot of tabletopping, and I still wanted. I had stuff I wanted to write, stuff I wanted to tell, a story, and the story goes, this rogue psyker, and the setting is the 41st millennium. The system was Dark Heresy, and then it turned into Black Crusade. And the story goes, a rogue psyker was found out by a God, what the fuck are they called? Inquisitor. That's what they're called. Yep. And he threatened this rogue psyker, this unsanctioned psyker, with termination if he didn't help him do the things he wanted. And so, standard fare Dark Heresy. And she's on Scintilla, the biggest hive world, basically the New York City piece of shit, giant floating, Coruscant-esque planet. And she gets some, decent stuff. She's from the upper crust nobility, so she's relatively unmutated, well regarded, well known. And so she goes out on her dalliances. She wears pants. She carries a gun. Things high nobility of Scintilla would never be caught dead to.
That's right. High nobility goes out, in the nude. They don't bother with any of those pants.
No, I mean, she wasn't wearing a skirt, motherfucker. That's what I mean. Clothing, how dare you?
Clothing is for plebes. We will shiver and freeze up the top of this hive city, and we will like it.
Sharp enough to cut diamond. But anyway, it was a little court intrigue at first, and then it got into, minor espionage, and then she got into the low ranks of Scintilla, seeing the mutated, the poor, the unwashed masses. The Shiv Scammer type characters. And she did all these things outstandingly, but because she's a psyker, she left a bit of a trace. So the Inquisitor said, hop on with these guardsmen, go over to this planet, take care of this thing. What he didn't mention was that it was a one-way trip. And so she basically, this psyker of some capability, because psykers in the Dark Heresy system are really powerful. They have the power of total chance and badassery on their side. And so she's with these superstitious guardsmen. It was very much like Vietnam. It didn't go well. Very few people survived. She made it out. They ended up stealing a ship. They made it over to an unsanctioned planet that was the only thing nearby that they could get to, because they couldn't go back to Scintilla because the Inquisitor wanted them dead, because it was a one-way trip. So they go to this unsanctioned, non-official Imperial planet. They get there. It's rugged. It's mutated. People are banging. It's so heretical that it's a bit jarring. And she meets this guy, or she actually met this guy in Scintilla, but he ends up meeting her on the planet, and his name is the Serpent, and he's the hottest, sexiest gunslinger that's ever been out there, and he's great with these flintlock pistols. He's the hottest shot there is, and he understands how this goes. He gets heretical shit because he's secretly an agent of Slanesh, but he's never told anybody, and he reveals this to this rogue psyker. So they hit it off, and they grow minorly fond of each other, and they have a few guardsmen with them, so they've got a minor posse. I had to fill in for the other party members, and so I had one guardsman chief, and then another unsanctioned psyker. The planet is about to have its ass blown up because it's unsanctioned, all this other stuff.
They gonna drop Exterminatus on that motherfucker?
Yeah, they're gonna go full Exterminatus on it because it's just easier to blow it up. And there's a great deal of revealing of the inhabitants of the planet. And the main character interacts with this death cult, and her allies become the people she has sworn to kill. And her only way off of this planet that's about to have itself blown up, the only way she can get out of it being blown up and continue with this wonderful relationship that she's founded with this Sylvester guy, this Serpent guy, is to trust these chaos cultists and step into this portal into the Screaming Vortex, which turns the game into Black Crusade. So it's been going on for about 2 or 3 months with Dark Heresy, and then turns into Black Crusade. And by this point, she's become an extremely powerful psyker because you scale really, really quickly.
That's right.
And only one of the guardsmen goes with her. There was some revealing about the origin of Sylvester and how he came from a particular ship on this planet, and there was like this confusion, and so she took him from he was recaptured by his original creator and the person that set him free, like his Slaneshi patron, and she kidnapped him, and she wanted to keep the relationship going, so she went into the Chaos Portal. But anyway, only one of the guardsmen stuck with, because he was like, I don't want to die, and you guys are really weird, but I'll take weird over dead. So they're rolling with this Chaos Squad, and they do this for about 10 years. And in the Yawning Portal, time means nothing, and it's very much like a cult of, you shave your head, you bathe when people tell you, and I played that up, and it was really hard and dark and weird. But this guardsman just kept wanting to be friends with the main character, but she didn't really care. She just wanted to hang out with, Sylvester, the serpent, the sexy gunslinger who sounded like this handsome man who could fire a bullet across a room.
You gave him a Spanish accent?
No, but that was my inspiration. He just had a suave, he was very much Antoine Charisse without the shitty accent.
Did he have a pencil mustache that he had to shave off as part of the cult?
He did.
Rip.
He actually did have a thin. He actually did have a thin mustache. But they stick with the cult for a while. She begins revealing that she's a very powerful psyker. She takes over the cult, and she directs it to certain planets and becomes more open world and lets her do whatever. What she doesn't realize is this entire time, while all this has been going on, there's been something wrong with her. There's been this mental disorder within her that I had set all the way back on the planet that was about to have its ass blown up. But we'll get to that in a second. So she goes to a planet, she sets things down, and she wants to take over. She wants to worship Zinch. She wants him to recognize her. She wants a Black Crusade, motherfucker. She wants it. And this guardsman keeps wanting to be friends with her. And he's totally mutated by this point from all the shit he's seen. But she doesn't have time for him. She's got her husband, they're married now. Her husband's Sylvester, the serpent. And she couldn't be happier. They're still in the honeymoon phase, and she's become more powerful, and he's become a more awakened Slanesh adept, and it's going great. But she's starting to realize that people are acting really weird around her. She can't figure out why. And so she performs this incredible magical ritual that delves into her mind and reveals aspects of herself that she could never see from an inward perspective. And it reveals that ever since the planet that was blown up, the Exterminatus planet, which in game time was about 4 months between the moment she figured it out and the actual blowing up of the planet, was that she has had a split personality disorder. That her husband has been dead this entire time. That she has been playing out this character in her head. And the way I did this was he would never be in the same room as other people. He would never speak directly to anyone else. He would never take damage in combat because he's legendary. Of course he would. People would be concerned. They'd say, hey, where was the serpent? Or she'd say, hey, have you seen Sylvester? And they would say, yeah. When just 10 minutes ago, she would come up to them with a gruff voice pretending to be Sylvester because she has a split personality. So they would all walk on eggshells around this amazing ticking time bomb of sentient power because they wanted to let her believe that her husband was still alive. And I feel like I did a shitty job of describing it, but we had to stop for the rest of the day because it was, it ripped her soul out. But the care I took in how the conversations went, who spoke to whom in what order, who helped who in what arrangements, and how other people interacted with her, and how her magic affected certain things is easily my crowning achievement as a GM. Because not once, from an out of play perspective, did she suspect it. And
My God.
And that is
even
epic.
better.
Epic as shit.
Yes. And I wanted to give it a slight happy ending, though very tragic. She felt really bad about continuing to play the game just because it was brutal. Like, how do you do that? You know, how do you keep playing that? And I had her play 2 more games, and she discovered a text that allowed for time travel because she's super crazy powerful Zinch bullshit. And she discovers this ritual. She sets this ritual to travel herself and herself alone back in time X amount of years. And to also translocate her where she was X amount of years ago. The time and place, 1 hour before the Exterminatus explosion. She grabbed Sylvester. She grabbed herself, who he was still alive at the time. He died in a fight on that planet while trying to leave it. She set herself for about 10 minutes before that fight, 1 hour before the explosion. She took him away. She found a nice beach. She sat him down. She told him the future, and they died.
It's pretty righteous.
That is...
It's a good way to tie that all together.
Jesus.
Yeah. It by the power of Zinch, I will unwrite history.
Well,
there you go.
Well
Real
done.
happy, fun
That's-
stuff.
Yeah.
happy fun
extra fun
stuff, yeah.
time.
Extra happy. No, it was not happy at all. There was a lot of tears. Yeah, dude.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It was intense, man.
Oh, damn! That hits at my soul, and I'm just hearing a
Yeah.
retelling of the story. Like Jesus,
Mhm.
it's pretty
Yeah,
rough.
dude, fucking Marissa gets like Marissa looks like her heart is filled with doom every time I bring the story up because she's like, "Yeah, it was amazing."
But also awful.
Yeah, it was all, no one wins in that scenario, but that's a thing that I don't think people explore in tabletop games or in actual Black Crusade, because in the 41st millennium, mental illness is seen as a weakness, but it's not ever depicted like it actually is.
And as they write in the
Because
books, there is only war.
Right. There's nothing else. It's if you're crazy, you're killed. And so I wanted to portray that truthfully, because in Black Crusade, the crazier you are, the more powerful you are. And I made her really crazy, and she was also really powerful. Normally I would never ever pop that kind of thing on a player who I'm not familiar with. So full disclaimer to anyone listening who I don't know, you have got to talk to your players about those kind of tropes that you're putting in your game, like extreme violence, like sexual content, sexual violence specifically, mental illness, like shortcomings, disabilities, like all kinds of stuff like that. Do not put that in your game without talking to your players. You've got to be upfront about all that shit.
You gotta have one of those TV things that show up on the screen. It's just like rated R for language, violence, sexual connotations, and you don't want to mess with them.
I honestly think that's a topic in and of itself of what content is okay to put in a tabletop, regardless of whether or not people consent to it. Because we all have buttons, we all have stuff that we don't like seeing, we're doing, we're interacting with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's got that.
But yeah, I've taken up a lot of time talking about my shit.
Well, as far as completely off of the railroading topic, because we've solved the
Oh, yeah.
mystery.
We solved it, man.
That's
Yeah,
that's really great.
The United Nations met and we solved world hunger. What's next?
Episode 1, we fucking
Yeah, boom.
We did it.
figured
We
some
won.
shit out.
Trump has been removed from office. We're good.
Oh fuck! Thank God. So yeah, there's actually a however it is you're playing your game. If you're going to be doing it online and chatting over Skype, or doing it pen and paper, tabletop with some dice and everything, this goes out to the audience. If you're going to run a game, let your players know what to expect from you, what you expect from them, and what kind of game you're going to run. Because if you don't do those things, it's someone is going to have a problem somewhere. I've run games where people have had serious issues come up because those things weren't addressed previously. So my advice to the audience is always, always, always
Wash your
have what
balls.
you're expecting. You do that too. Please wash your
Absolutely.
balls.
Very important.
Yes. But yeah, just totally do that. It'll
Well-
save yourself a lot of heartache.
Yeah. So now that we're watching our nuts,
Yeah.
we
That
d-
checks
we
out.
don't we don't need to be there for bathroom time. So, and speaking of time, I think we're about finished up here. We've solved the mystery. We've won.
We have.
We've won this topic, and we've all
Let's
learned
split up,
something
gang.
from here. No,
Shag and I'll take the kitchen.
you don't split the party. except I always split the party because I'm a rebel.
I always split the party. Kidding me?
Yeah.
Double Jack solved the best things by leaving.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
Blew
anyway.
up half a fucking country.
Anyway, we're gonna come back for our next topic on Higgs Cast.
Yeah, what
Playing
are we,
God.
What are we talking about next time?
Well, we got a few options we can go over.
Right. Hit us with it.
I was thinking. I mean, we already kind of touched on it this time with the power scaling. So why don't we go in depth on that next time?
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
All right. Well,
All right.
see you next time.
Bye. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.